So I want to start this by saying that what's going on with the planes crashing and stuff like this, I think that this is what's going on, that they're playing this card. All right. And I know it sounds nuts, but I mean, you go through these cards and there's so many things that they have on these cards. And some of them I question if they're fake because it's just, how would you say, some cards look older than others. That's what I'm trying to say. So some of these I'm wondering if they were put together. But I've had this one in my gallery saved for a while now because this and this is what I've been waiting for. You know, the one that's going to come along and, you know, supposedly manipulate the weather. But I mean, we know because of Debbie Traverse and her videos that she's done that, you know, they said like, was it 2024, they wanted to be able to manipulate the jet streams. She said that, you know, from the paper she was reading from at the time on her video, that the plan was to be able to reverse the jet stream to make it flow in reverse. That they wanted New York to be as hot as Florida and vice versa, and that they wanted, which I mean, I was like, that stopped me right there because it was like, reminded me of the I Am Robot movie where they show like the plaque for Lake Michigan was all dried up and there was no more ships in the lakes, and there was just like a bunch of shipping crates there sitting on sand and stuff like that. So I'm just like, yep. But I mean, like, I was thinking this is what they're aiming for. So I purchased this book. I'm waiting on it to get here. It was called The African Revolt in Iraq, which I thought was interesting. Sorry about that. I'm at work. The Virgin Revolt, rebellion, a majority of enslaved Africans in the Abbasid Caliphate occurred in southern Iraq near Bashar from 869 to 883, led by Adin Muhammad, and involved enslaved East Africans. Now, here's what I thought was interesting, though, because this is what made me stop and say, all right, let me get this book here. Let's see if it will clear up. This is what made me stop and say, all right, what's with this book? Let's get this. Because I was trying to go into the, what's the thing called? What's it called? The quest they did for the Holy Land, the Crusades, and I stopped because it got boring after a while. But I thought this was interesting because look at the way this guy under the tree here's appearance. That look reminds me of that Robin Hood look. And like in the Robin Hood stories, he teams up with an Essene, somebody from the Middle East there, to help him fight. Hold on, let me see if I get that to clear back up. Oh, I double tapped. Hold on, I'm making a mess of this. So yeah, it was just the cover that made me stop and say, you know, look, what's this about? But I went ahead and I'm trying to find out more about it because I can't wait for the book to get here. It's taking forever. I thought, you know, this was interesting. And then, so I started reading about the tribe. That's the most popular one they talked about here so far. So, and this is what I was talking about. It's going to tell you the tribe here. So now I read this with a little bit of skepticism already, because like, how do I say this? Oh, I'll see if I can prove it when I get.
An extremely important book. David Bryan Davis, Yale University. Author of Slavery and Human Progress, This is a monograph in the best tradition of French Islamic scholarship. Choice: The Revolt of African Slaves in Iraq from 869 to 883 c. Known as the Revolt of the Zang, was one of the great rebellions of world history and the first major uprising in the history of the African diaspora. The Zang were black slaves shipped overseas from East Africa to work in salt mines and plantations under the harshest conditions. Their fate resembled that of slaves sent across the Atlantic. And their revolt triggered racism against blacks among Arabs. Like the Spartacus revolt, it threatened a world power, in this case the Abbasid Empire. The revolt also signified one unique instance of solidarity among Africans in the diaspora, when black soldiers of the Caliph deserted and joined the revolt. Popovic's book is the only full-length study in any major language of the revolt of the Zang. Scholars of slavery, the African diaspora, and the Middle East have lauded and extensively quoted from the original French edition of Popovic's groundbreaking work. Zang, Arabic. Adjective. Zangi, from Persian, Zeng, Romanized. Zang, 1, 2, is a term used by medieval Muslim geographers to refer to both a certain portion of Southeast Africa, primarily the Swahili coast, and to its Bantu inhabitants. 3. It has also been used to refer to East Africans collectively by Arab sources. 4. 613. This word is also the origin of the place names Zanzibar, coast of the Zanji, and the Sea of Zang.
See right there at the top there, it says that word is from the Persian. But these are East Africans, right? Romanized. Zang. Let's see here. And like I said, you already know my theory. People were dropped off here, and they made their way from here to spread out all over Africa. The Bantu, that is, when I say the people. So
Modernizations and Gium serves as an archaic name for the coastal area in modern Kenya and Tanzania in southern East Africa. The architecture of these commercial urban settlements is now a subject of study for urban planning. 5. 6. For centuries the coastal settlements were a source of ivory, gold, and slaves. From sections of the conquered hinterland, to the Indian Ocean world. Zanj or Zang in Persian means the country of the blacks. Other transliterations include Zenj, Zinj, and Zang. 8. 9. Anthony Christie argued that the word Zanj or Zang may not be Arabic in origin. A Chinese form, Sengqi, is recorded as early as 607 AD. Christie argued that the word is Southeast Asian in origin. 10. 33. The Javanese word Genji means African people. Specifically the people of Zanzibar. 11. 740. It is known that the Indonesian Austronesian peoples reached Madagascar by ca. 5500 CE. 12. 13. As for their route, one possibility is that the Indonesian Austronesians came directly across the Indian Ocean from Java to Madagascar. It is likely that they went through the Maldives, where evidence of old Indonesian boat design and fishing technology persists until the present. 14. 10.
I would just like to say kaboom. There it is. That's crazy that they have this right there. This other man's opinion, because normally they'll just stick with the lie, but they give you the that this possibly is South Asian, this is Chinese. These people, I mean, come on, that's crazy, right? That's crazy. Like I said, I think my theory is they were picked up and moved and placed there. That's crazy. Let's see here.
Geographers historically divided the eastern coast of Africa at large into several regions based on each region's respective inhabitants. Arab and Chinese sources referred to the general area that was located to the south of the three regions of Misr, Egypt, Al-Habasha, Abyssinia, and Barbara, Somalia. As Zanj. 15. Zanj was situated in the southeast Africa vicinity and was inhabited by Bantu-speaking peoples called the Zanj. 3. 15. 16. The core area of Zanj occupation stretched from the territory south of present-day Ras Kamboni, 17, to Pemba Island in Tanzania. South of Pemba lay Sofala in modern Mozambique, the northern boundary of which may have been Pangani. Beyond Sofala was the obscure realm of Wak Wak. Also in Mozambique. 18, 19. The 10th-century Arab historian and geographer Abu al-Hassan, Ali al-Masazudi describes Sofala as the furthest limit of Zanj settlement, and mentions its king's title as Imfam, a Bantu word. 3. The Zanj Rebellion was a series of uprisings that took place between 869 and 883 AD near the city of Basra in present-day Iraq during slavery in the Abbasid Caliphate. Many Zanj were taken as slave soldiers. But many had earned their freedom and chose to stay in Iraq as free persons and make Iraq their home, living amongst the Marsh Arabs. 34. However, the term Zanj here is thought to refer to all East Africans in general due to the lack of a prolific slave trade on the Swahili coast during this period. 35. 613 Ma Shaban explains that the Zanj rebellion was not a slave rebellion but rather an Arab rebellion supported by East African immigrants in Iraq. It was not a slave revolt. It was a Zanj, i.e., a Negro, revolt. To equate Negro with slave is a reflection of 19th-century racial theories. It could only apply to the American South before the Civil War. On the contrary, some of the people who were working in the salt marshes were among the first to fight against the revolt. Of course, there were a few runaway slaves who joined the rebels. But this still does not make it a slave revolt. The vast majority of the rebels were Arabs of the Persian Gulf supported by free East Africans who had made their homes in the region. 36.
So yeah, I'll leave the link to this book down below. But I just thought this was interesting. Like I said, the cover caught my attention. But I was not. I mean, I'm excited to get the book and find out what it has to say, because I mean that's interesting. The connections between its name and China, especially South Asia, because we know that some of the oldest bones that were discovered in South Asia are described as being. Hold on, they're described as being sub-Saharan African. And I know this is not near the. Oh, I know where they're located in Kenya. It's not near the sub-Sahara, but still, there's just now says that there was more than one group of people that were living over there that are now in Africa. That's what it says to me. But I didn't go over all this other stuff here about their DNA because it's just that always gets long and drawn out. And I mean, we might do this section right here.
A study by Brielle et al. In 2023 completed ancient DNA analysis of several samples from the ruins of Zanzibar. Ancient DNA ADNA analysis was completed for 80 individuals from 6 medieval and early modern AD 1250 to 1800, coastal towns and an inland town after AD 1650 in order to determine the proportions of African-like, Persian-like, and Indian-like DNA sequences. More than half of the DNA of many of the individuals from coastal towns originated from primarily female ancestors from Africa, with a large proportion, sometimes more than half, of the DNA coming from Asian ancestors. The Asian ancestry includes components associated with Persia and India, with 80 to 90% of the Asian DNA originating from Persian men. Peoples of African and Asian, predominantly Persian, origins began to mix by about AD 1000. 26. Samples were taken from 2 boxes of human remains located in British Institute in Eastern Africa, BIEA, in Nairobi. Originally excavated in the 1950s and 1960s by Chittick, 27.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So, what are they saying? The mothers of these people are from Africa? Sorry about that. That's disgusting. The mothers of these people are from Africa, and the fathers are Asians. And then they're mixed in with people who say they're Persians and people from India. Oh, that's incredible.